I've talked to enough admissions committee members to know that they really, really look at those stories. And they'll look at a student with the 3.5 GPA who has overcome a ton in a better light than another student with a 3.5 GPA who hasn't had to overcome anything. Telisha, welcome to Ask Dr. Gray Pre-Med Q&A. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you.
Awesome. What can I help you with today?
Yes, so I am in the midst of applying to medical school this cycle. My MCAS verification went through on the 22nd of July.
Okay.
So I am in the midst of secondaries.
The secondary plague.
Yes, plague, that is a good word.
Yes. It's like a swarm of locusts coming for you.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, that's about how I feel right now. So yeah, I just have some questions regarding my secondaries and then my overall application, just being where I'm at in the cycle.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, just to give a little bit of a preface of who I am, I'm a bit of a non-traditional applicant. I graduated from a university in 2018. I wasn't really sure I wanted to do medicine until about my junior year.
Okay.
And so a little bit later to this process, I haven't known I wanted to be a doctor since I was in diapers or anything like that. But,
you're not one of us then.
Yeah. And I guess I just want to say thank you too, because when I started this process, I think it was in 2016, your podcast really helped me out a lot, especially giving me a motivation to continue on the path, even though a lot of things were against me, especially time and schooling. And so I just really appreciate all of your resources that have very much helped me out.
Glad I could help.
I am currently working full-time as a medical assistant.
Great.
Supporting my husband as he finishes his undergraduate degree.
Nice.
So I'm kind of the baby mama right now. I don't know. So I'm working full-time to support our family. I am married, no children.
Okay.
I'm just about to turn 26, so not too old, but definitely a little more non-traditional in the sense that I didn't really know I wanted to do this.
Okay.
And so as of now, I guess I'm just trying to figure out the best way to portray myself in my secondaries. Just kind of, I am a federal applicant waiver for the AMCAS, so I do have that. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to portray my obstacles that I've had to overcome without, finding the balance without seeming too much like I'm making excuses, but also being realistic and authentic about the situation.
So before we go any further, when you say federal applicant waiver, I'm assuming you mean the fee assistance program? That's that waiver?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So your question or your concern really is what it is super common for students who have had to overcome a lot of obstacles. Right? So for you, whatever those obstacles have been in your journey, they're just like, yep, I've dealt with them. I've overcome them. They're just part of me. That's who I am. But then when you get to this stage in your application and there's questions in the secondaries about, tell me about the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome. You're like, well, is it really big? It's just kind of me and what I've done. And one of the biggest kind of the language that I hear from students is, I don't want anybody to feel pity for me. Right. And it's like, well, it depends on how you write it, right? What frame of reference, what kind of perspective are you bringing to the table when you're writing about it? I think at this stage of the game, you've obviously gotten here. You've applied to medical school, so you have some semblance, I'm hoping, of good grades and good MCAT score, good enough to give you the confidence to apply. So there should be no pity taken, right? Because you're at this point. Right? There would be pity if you're like before applications going, hey, look at me, look what I've had to come from. Just let me apply, please. I know I don't have good grades. I know I don't have a good MCAT score. Just pity me. So that's the pity angle. But you've gotten to this point. You've overcome the obstacles. You've submitted your application. You're working on your secondaries. There's no pity to be had. Now it's just, let me see what you've done, how you've gotten to this point. And I've talked to enough admissions committee members to know that they really, really look at those stories. And they'll look at a student with a 3.5 GPA who has overcome a ton in a better light than another student with a 3.5 GPA who hasn't had to overcome anything. And it's all about what you've done with what you've been given. And so you need to just tell your story as truthfully and as honest as possible without exaggerating, without trying to limit it as well. And really just let the admissions committee members, let the readers of your application know, here's what I've been through, here's what it did to me, here's how it's made me stronger and why I'm here today. And you just don't worry about the pity part because there's nothing to pity.
Thank you. I really needed that.
All right, we're
I
done.
think I know I'm definitely like trying to play it off again, and I've talked to other people who are like, no, you need to talk about it.
Yep.
And I think one of my bigger issues when you're saying like GPA and MCAT, it's like I don't have the 98th percentile MCAT. I don't
Yep.
have, I have really struggled with my academics and I didn't do as well as I wanted to on my MCAT, but again,
Nobody does as well as they want to on their MCAT. Like, I didn't get a 528. I didn't do as well as I wanted.
I know, that's true. That is true. It's all about perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's the other thing, like with GPA and grades, it's like I feel like, so for example, like I had to work full time. Like I supported myself through college. Like I didn't have any family assistance or help.
Yep.
So I was writing off of Pell Grants and my own dime. And I know that other students have been in the situation, and I think that's where it's like I'm trying to avoid the comparison game.
You never want to compare. Definitely don't want to compare. Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen, like, if you've started pre-writing your secondaries from secondaryapps.com, if you've seen the secondaries, a lot of secondaries ask, did you have to work while you were a student? And that's your opportunity to, that is how you differentiate yourself, because a lot of students don't. A lot of students do. I don't know what the percentages are of pre-meds who need to work, who don't work. I worked a bunch when I was in college. So again, I wouldn't come at it from what is going to separate me from the other students. And because if you do that, then you are playing the comparison game, and that just, it never works. And so you have to come from a point of view of, here's my story, take it or leave it, right? And just lay it all out on the table.
Okay, awesome. So don't be afraid to tell my true story, is what you're saying.
Don't be afraid. And I'll put an asterisk with it. I talk about it a lot with potential red flags, right? If part of your story is you were a coke addict, right? Then potentially there's some concern to lay all of that out on the table. And I always pick some sort of drug addiction, not to make light of it, but to really highlight a concern that addiction is one of those things that is a potential big red flag in the application process, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's that I've read your personal statement book. It helps me write my personal statement, so thanks, kid.
Good.
But I think for me, it's just trying to get over that my academics, I always feel like is a red flag for me, but I know that I still I have an overall 3.4 GPA, so it's not great, but it's definitely not, in the red flag area. So
upward trend?
What was that?
Upward trend?
Yes, upward trend.
Okay.
I dipped really lowly my sophomore year when I began to work full time. So I think that's what I'm trying to illustrate with my story is I had saved up for college since 16, and then lo and behold, what do you know? After the first year, all of those funds ran dry. So I had to
Shocker.
Continue to work, and that is when my grades definitely took a hit. It's a very drastic trend, but then I've built slowly up since then. So
maintaining the same workload as well?
Yes, I was also an athlete in college, and so I think
you have the perfect story. It's not like, hey, I dropped down because I decided to join a sorority and party all the time. It's like, hey, I had to work to support myself. I was an athlete supporting my teammates, assuming it's a team sport. So your story is the perfect story to really highlight why you dipped down and then show that you have overcome.
Yeah.
Tell your story.
All right. Okay. I will do that. So I guess some other questions that I have. So the big thing now, what I'm struggling with is, of course, my application was verified on the 22nd.
Yep.
I got hit with all these secondaries.
Yep.
I mean, you're like, yep, I know, on the 23rd, 24th. So I mean, I did pre-write my secondary. So I did do
Awesome.
document. I took your suggestions. I've made a very organized document by state of all
Hmm.
the schools I'm applying to, when I received the applications and all of the essays. So, I mean, I pre-wrote probably about 2 or 3 worth. I wish I would have done more.
Okay.
And I've gotten to the point now where I have recycled some of my essays, but I think right now I'm a perfectionist and I read the essays like several times before I submit, which I know you're supposed to do anyway. It's putting your best foot forward. But when do you sacrifice that like perfection aspect with the very fact that you have so many in your inbox? Timeliness matters.
Yeah.
It's a rolling admissions process. So I
Yep.
think, how do I find that balance between putting, my best foot forward, being perfect, taking hours on submitting one versus trying to pump them out as quickly as possible?
Yeah. So hours on submitting one doesn't sound too scary to me. It's when students are starting to take days to submit one. In my mind, I think that any student after the first couple can start to turn around secondaries within a day.
Okay.
In terms of sitting down, seeing the question prompts or the essay prompts, and then writing them, editing them, reviewing them, and then just submitting them. I think at some point the perfectionism, obviously, most of the people on this journey are type A pre-med students, so everything has to be perfect. And yeah, welcome to the club. That some of that has to let go with the mindset of, if you don't let it go, all you're doing is hurting yourself at this point. Right? If you're in school and you're writing an essay, there's a deadline that as long as you're in by the deadline, you're fine. At this point with secondaries, every day that you delay is another day where there are more interview seats that are taken.
That's
And
my anxiety.
yeah, and with that mindset, you just have to let go just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. Instead of checking it 5 times, you only check it 3 times, right? I'm not saying don't be a perfectionist. I'm saying be less of a perfectionist.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I think with that too, it's like with my situation. I mean, I'm working full time, so honestly, like when I usually get to it, it's after a full day of work, and I only can pump out a couple hours worth. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just trying to get that mindset of pumping them through
Yeah.
as much as possible. It's difficult, but of course.
Now, working full time, is there any flexibility to go to your job and say, "Hey, I need to take one day off," and like make it a 3-day weekend where Friday, Saturday, Sunday you're just banging through all of them?
I actually do have Mondays off, which has been a huge
Perfect.
blessing. So
Okay.
yeah, I pump through, like my Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays have been fully committed.
Good.
But it's that whole mindset where I'm like, yes, I have all day Monday.
Fully committed to secondary essays? Okay.
To second, yeah.
Good.
Like this weekend, yeah, I'm clearing out my schedule to get this done. This is my future. I don't want to mess with it.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is this last Monday I sat down at like 8 a.m. and I was like, I'm gonna pump through like 3 today. And then by 2 o'clock I was still working on my first one, and I was just like, why am I going so slow? So I think that's where I'm just trying to find that balance to kind of like push through them a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Because
how many have you done so far?
6.
Okay. So they should start to, at this point, be a little bit more repetitive, which is nice. And it's funny, as we're recording this, the podcast for the pre-med years that went out yesterday on July 31st was an interview with Carl, Illinois College of Medicine, and we talked a lot about secondary essays, and they have a very unique secondary essay. Their whole application process is very different. They don't even do interviews, and so if the way that they want to have secondaries go, right? Because they're out pushing to other schools, like, you need to be more unique with your secondary essay prompts. If every school was like Carl, Illinois, then the secondary essay process would be much, much, much harder, because a lot of what you write for one won't necessarily translate to another. So there won't be a lot of copying and pasting. So right now we're in a nice spot where Some medical schools are a little bit lazy and they have a lot of repetitive questions, not super unique questions. But in the future, maybe that will change. So take advantage of it now.
Awesome. Yeah, and I have been trying to go like online to the medical schools and
Hmm.
trying to see, where their curriculum fits in with my interests. So I feel like I've
Yeah.
done a pretty good job of that. I think again it's just, I know you've said this before, like if it's not time consuming, if you're afraid about the time consuming part, then you should find another profession. Okay, I need to remember that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think just now it's just finding that balance.
Okay.
I guess another question. So I've looked on, well, I've done on Medical School HQ. I've researched through all of the secondary stuff.
Hmm.
And I think I haven't really found just like and I know it's probably going to be, because it differs per applicant, but I know there's, on those 3-letter websites out there, Reddit or whatnot, there's that set, like, okay, like you apply in this order to your secondaries. Like,
Yeah.
what would you recommend as far as finding the balance? Because I haven't already applied to all but one of my DO schools. And so
Okay.
I've applied DO. And then I am trying to figure out like what order to apply. Because I mean, you have like, I got 8 in one day. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do I sort through? Do you just say location? Do you just say,
For me, it's whatever your top choice is, and so you're constantly and how is that determined? Well, is it location, class size, curriculum, all of those things that I talk about as far as making a school list. So as you get your secondaries every morning when you start to work on it, you go, okay, out of these 10 that I have, which one is my top choice? I'm going to work on that one first. And then you have 9 left. Okay, which one is my top choice? Then you work on that one. And you just go from there so that you are out of the schools that you really, really, really want to go to for whatever reasons, you are submitting those secondaries first so that your application is complete sooner at those schools.
and then there's no 2-week turnaround rule, right?
So I subscribe to the 2-week turnaround rule. I think as soon as you can, you turn them around. If you're over 2 weeks, it doesn't mean don't submit it, but as soon as you can.
Okay.
Right? It's all about rolling admissions.
Yes, I know. It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yes.
I think it definitely. So let's see. Another question I had is, how can I effectively emphasize my location connection? So I guess so, like my husband's family, they're all from Hawaii. And so we're applying to the medical school in Hawaii, and I'm doing that secondary right now. I've wanted to save it so I can have a little bit of time to improve my essay writing.
Yeah.
But how do I like just hit strong my emphasis on the location and how that's like the top medical school without sounding like too desperate? I don't know.
So it's interesting. It's hard, especially if in the secondary essays, and I don't know what Hawaii's secondary essays are. I don't say it the fancy way that you say Hawaii, but I don't know what their secondary essays look like to know if they specifically ask, hey, why are you applying to Hawaii? Especially if they're flagging you as an out-of-state applicant
Yeah.
and giving you a special secondary for that. Some schools will do that. So if they
One of
are,
the secondaries specifically says, what are your ties to
Yeah.
Jobs Home or Hawaii?
yeah, milk it. Yeah, my husband's from there. His family is there. We travel there X number of times a year. Yeah, you milk it for all you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for other students, just to kind of pile on to that, if you're applying to a school or for you, if you're applying to a school that doesn't specifically say, hey, what are your ties to this area? Obviously, Hawaii is a little bit unique because it's an island out in the middle of the ocean. To say, hey, what are your ties to this area, the school? If the secondary asks it, great. If the secondary doesn't, a lot of secondaries will have a, hey, is there anything else you want to tell us type prompt, and that's where you would put that to say, hey,
Okay.
I really want to come to this school. And if the prompt isn't specifically what are your ties to this area to want to come here, then you should focus more on the school and less on the location. I would definitely add the location, but focus more on the school to say, hey, I really want to come to this school because of XYZ, and not I want to come to this school because it's convenient because all my family's here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one is Colorado, actually, University of Colorado. I have family
Good
that
school.
lives like 2 hours from Colorado. So I'm applying there.
Okay.
I'm an out-of-state applicant.
Yep.
So yeah, that was another thing too. It's like I've been to Colorado every summer since I started college.
Yep.
Just trying to milk that as much as
Perfect.
possible. Oh, okay. How are we on time?
We have a couple minutes left.
Okay. Um, let's see. I think just how do I mean, of course, we're in secondaries right now, but I guess looking more forward to. Actually, no. Let me say this. So I have reached out to my schools just because I received a C minus in one of my organic chemistry classes, which I know isn't ideal. I actually suffered a concussion like 2 weeks before the semester ended. I'm a rugby athlete for my school, and so obviously, like, didn't that game didn't go off too well. But
Yep.
so I guess that is the one other situation that I've been trying to kind of not explain away, but just kind of like show the schools like this is a reason why I've gotten this low of a grade.
Mhm.
Some schools have actually precluded, like I haven't been able to apply because of the C minus. So I guess
Yeah, usually a C minus doesn't meet the requirements for passing that class.
It's the 2.0. So the schools I've applied to, I've all personally reached out to them
Okay.
and received confirmation that a C is a C is a C.
Okay.
So my question is for those who even don't ask it, how do I weave that into my, hey, is there anything else I need to know? Because I don't want to take up the time per se just about that C minus. But
yeah, so
to.
for me, if it's one C minus, I wouldn't even bring it up unless a lot of secondaries will specifically say, hey, for every class that you got less than a B in or less than a B minus or whatever, right? Then explain it. If that question isn't there, one C minus to me, it's a blip on a radar and doesn't need to be brought up. I mean, the assumption is, you said it was OChem?
Okay.
Yeah, right. That's a good one to get a C minus in because guess what? Everybody struggles with OChem. So they'll just go, oh, look, another student who struggled with OChem. Now for me, the question would come up, why didn't you retake it? That would be the question that I would have as I was reading your application. And so that would be the bigger question to me, not why you got a C minus, but why didn't you retake it? Knowing that I think the majority of schools out there don't consider that good enough for passing the prereq.
And that's where I feel like I would explain that I have to work full, like it's just not an option for my life right now. I know some DO schools said you can take it online, but that does take a full year, and not a lot of schools like it online.
Yeah.
And they need it from a university, not a community college. So simply with my full-time work schedule right now, it's just not a possibility.
Okay.
So I guess would that be sufficient, or should I
potentially
more into that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I guess, let's see. I don't know, just kind of looking forward. How do because I know the non-traditional path is becoming the traditional one. I know that, that's been more common, especially these last cycles. How do I don't know, how do I stand out as far as from my non-traditional path as to, again, this is kind of the comparison game, but how do I stand out?
As soon as you say stand out, you're going down the wrong path, right? You tell your story. You lean on the things that you've learned from your experiences, without going, look at how different I am because of that. You talk about your journey, you talk about your experiences, how you've had to balance school and being an athlete and working and all this other stuff. Don't lean on it to stand out. Lean on it because that's your story. That's all.
Okay. And then lastly, just looking forward to interviews. So my financial status, of course, right now, I don't have the money to go out and spend, hundreds of dollars on any interview prep course.
Yep.
What is the best way besides milking the website, which I've been doing?
Yep.
I feel like I've been setting aside. I have the interview book already. I've been setting that aside to get through my secondaries, and once I'm done with that, what are some recommendations you could give me as far as looking forward into interview season, as someone with limited resources financially?
So the interview book, definitely, obviously super cheap to get, especially the Kindle version's like $6 or something. Lean on if you have access to pre-med advisors, if you have access to the physicians where you're a medical assistant, to see if they'd be willing to do a mock interview with you. in the interview book, I think I have like 600 questions in there, and you can kind of say, "Hey, husband, can you ask me some of these questions and let me know what you think?" Really, just remembering that the goal of the interview is to have a conversation. And I think if you go in with that mindset and you don't go in with the mindset of, I need to stand out, I need to separate myself, I need to sell myself, I need to show them how amazing I am, that's where students go wrong versus just going in, pretending like you're sitting down at Starbucks with your best friends and just having a conversation about your life and your journey.
Awesome.
All
All
right.
right. Yes.
Well, thanks for calling in and taking the time to have a chat.
Thank you, Dr. Gray.
You're
Yep,
welcome.
I'm sure I'll be in touch as
Great.
this process goes forward.
Let me know. Keep me informed.
All right. Thank you.
Bye bye.